Okay, everybody, it is good to have you back. We are now in part 5 of our 10 point thing, going through the CHP kind of platform, as it were, point by point. There's some things I'm making comments on, other things there's not much to comment on, and even these are general policies. Sometimes they're not specific platform points, but I will also make my comments as we need to. This can be super boring, so I apologize. You can look at all the other videos, and or hopefully I will make these in small snippets, and at the same time maybe this will be of interest to you, so that you can get involved and that you can develop your own points as well. So here we are dealing with platform point number 5, resource management. So general statements, we want to be good stewards of God's earth, and we are needing to be responsible for the preservation and being productive of all our world's resources. Pollution and mismanagement are not appropriate and are abuse of our mandates to develop the earth and care for it, and we should be committed to spending in the area of resource management for personal and national prosperity. So we need to be careful of that. Provincial jurisdiction, national resources and health fall under provincial jurisdiction except for 3 territories, and an agreement like the so-called Kyoto protocols is ultra vires in Canada. Interesting. Greenhouse gases. I know in general there's federal and provincial issues. In general, some of my opinion is we need to eliminate more and more federal issues and convert them to be more provincial issues. Canada should step away from more and more issues, but we will discuss that as we move forward, though. Greenhouse gases, both water vapor and carbon dioxide, are at historic levels, are to be recognized as beneficial greenhouse gases, and methane to be recognized as a generally harmful greenhouse gas. Okay. Both water vapor and carbon dioxide at all historic levels are to be recognized as beneficial greenhouse gases. Methane to be recognized as harmful. So not all carbon dioxide is dangerous and whatnot. So that's CHP's stand on that. Pollution, control of the environment. Pollution is essential to the concept of good stewardship, and we have a duty to act and enforce adequate legislation to safeguard against abuses. Fair enough. Climate change. We recognize that the serious economic detriment of both national and worldwide issues and help create policies based. We got to be careful not to base a ton of assumptions on unproven climate change and history and theories and things like that. We do not support any international policies, treaties, or protocols that are based on unproven environmental assumptions, and that would adversely affect the cultural and economic growth of developing countries based on unobservable scientific data. And the CHP will support those regulations and agreements and address real pollution problems affecting Canada and the world. Okay. Education. Educational media should be provided for use in schools so that Canada's youth can be challenged to participate in recycling and environmental issues. Okay. Agricultural issues. Family farms. We recognize agricultural to be the mainstay of Canadian economy, and the independent owner-operated family farm is vital. Okay. Respect for farmland. Farmland should be treated as valuable resources and should be subject to a reasonable standard of management. The Canadian farmland should be owned by residents of Canadian citizens and landed immigrants only. Okay. Corporate farming. We affirm that the family farm or farm partnerships cooperative is the form of tenure which allows the most stewardly and efficient use of land and animals. Ownership of farmland by large corporations should be restricted. Okay. Diplomacy. Government must strive to create level playing field for agricultural trade within our own nations. Governments must also protect agricultural producers from heavily subsidized imported products from abroad. Agricultural policy must continually upgrade to cope with new challenges in production and marketing. Government should work through diplomatic challenges and channels or whatever to reduce subsidies worldwide. As research and development, as a service, government should make the latest statistics available on which products might command a high return. Scientific review of practices should be implemented, comparing them to other countries. We want to be the most efficient as possible. So maybe we can, as a federal government, collect a lot more detail for our local farmers to deal with. Adequate research and development should be devoted to matters for pest control, efficient irrigation, soil cultivation, wastes, fuel, all kinds of stuff, handling, processing, and find new efficient ways of doing things and new technologies and whatnot. Okay, forestry issues. Federal, provincial, territorial cooperation. There must be adequate federal cooperation to develop and protect our forests by encouraging amplification of the ambient carbon dioxide levels. There must be adequate federal, provincial, territorial cooperation to further develop and protect our forests by encouraging amplification of the ambient carbon dioxide levels. So that's probably very different from what most people would probably read. We want to amplify carbon dioxide levels. Federal spending. Adequate federal assistance should provide forest inventories, research, fire protection, insect control, reforestation, and ambient carbon dioxide amplification. Fisheries and Oceans. Okay, must cooperation. Jurisdiction of saltwater species should lie within the federal government, whereas provincial jurisdiction should apply to freshwater. Resource management should be integrated with other departments such as forestry, mines, hydro to ensure natural spawning grounds that channels remain viable. Where a new dam or industry threatening the migration of habits of fish need to provide adequate provision to be made that artificial fish ladders to permit access to spawning grounds. Okay, Salmon Enhancement Program. We affirm that the ongoing Salmon Enhancement Program is necessary for the continuing enhancement of the salmon runs on both the east and west coast. This program should include all provinces and territories. Habitat protection should protect the habitat. It must maintain sustainable yields of national fish stocks, and the basis of fisheries legislation should be the enforcement of an act that provides for penalties for willing or negligent impairment of the habitat. Fishing restrictions. Adequate legislation and facilities should exist for the federal fisheries authorities to enforce maximum catch limits or foreign fishing restrictions within territorial waters. Okay, land, energy, and mines. Lands. We affirm that the interest of preserving our lands for future Canadians is one's principal's residence, business, or parcel of land for recreational should not be owned by anybody other than a Canadian citizen or a corporation whose majority ownership is Canada. Provincial ownership laws. We believe that no province should limit ownership of land to Canadian citizen residents. We believe that no province should limit ownership of land to Canadian citizens resident in their province only. Okay, so it's got to be all Canadians. Necessity for energy conservation. We affirm the importance of regulation authorities bearing in mind the ultimate exhaustion of petroleum, natural gas supplies, and other non-renewables. So we got to be careful. Nuclear energy and expansion of the use of nuclear energy for commercial purposes should be accompanied by means of disposing nuclear waste that will not irreparably damage the environment. The climate, geoengineering. Will not allow the we will not allow the intentional discharge into Canadian skies any substance, particle, or gas designated to reflect sunlight for the purpose of reducing so-called man-made climate change. And alternative energies. The Canadian Federal government should encourage research and development and an orderly, gradual transition toward replacements of reliance on non-renewable to renewable. Okay. The renewable energy produced must be sold at fair market value and done with the best interests. Okay. Tourism. Tourism promotion should be promoted by the government as to share the natural beauties of our nation with visitors, foster goodwill and international understanding. Okay. Prohibit gambling with the corporation of other levels of government. Tourist attractions such as gambling casinos, which naturally invite vice or crime, should be prohibited. So prohibit gambling. Okay, that's interesting. That can be controversial. I don't really have thoughts one way or the other. I think it's a pretty destructive habit, but I don't know if I would eliminate or not. Interesting. National parks, valuable legacy for future generations. We recognize wilderness preservations to protect animal and plant life. Increased acreage should be set aside under the protection. Okay. So there we go. And now we're moving on to the law.